All right, founders. I am here with Adam Hoeksema of ProjectionHub. Let's jump right into it. All founders have to figure out how to eventually do financial projections. It's one of these really important things that founders have to do, but it's like an afterthought. And sometimes, rightfully so, there's a certain time and place to start thinking about projections. But founders that don't think about projections or don't know how to do financial projections or just get in the same ballpark as a sensible financial projection when it comes to raising capital at any stage, when you're serious about raising capital, well, that's big trouble. And I think, and I'm going to ask Adam about it, I think projections are sort of a mix between an art and a science quite often, especially when you're an early stage founder. But we're going to ask Adam all these questions. And my hope for all you founders out there is that you walk away today going, I feel a little more confident thinking about financial projections and knowing where to go get some information or even where to start when it comes to your own education, all about the almighty financial projection. And you know what I'm talking about? We're talking about when you got that pitch deck and you are sitting there and you nailed the problem, the solution, the TAM, the team, all that stuff. And then they start asking you questions about money, about how you're calculating costs for this and how you came to this conclusion or this assumption when it comes to your financials. Well, we are here today. Adam, ProjectionHub, financial projection templates, DIY projection software, and custom CPA support for raising capital and business planning. This is something all founders definitely could need. As soon as I saw this, I said, wow, this solves a pain point that I know many founders experience. Adam, thanks for coming on and spending this time with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. I'm glad that someone else is excited about talking about projections. So
Well, for me, I get excited because I'll tell you a personal story. This is what I tell a lot of aspiring founders. There was a time that I really got challenged in terms of being able to build a business from zero to $1 million. And it was a good challenge. It was something that just revealed something that I was missing. And I went to a business mentor and I said, how do you do it? He'd built all these businesses, sitting at about 9 figures of assets. And he said to me, Ed, you can manage everything by numbers. The spreadsheets don't lie. The numbers don't lie. You want to know how to manage a business, learn how to look at your financials. And if you don't understand margin, unit economics, everything like that, you don't understand business. So I became sort of obsessed with trying to figure out, well, I don't want to be an accountant, but I need to know how to strategically be a CEO and lead my startup properly. And that's what got me into this whole world of understanding, just being financially literate and savvy when it came to the financials of a business. So then when I see someone coming in like you, creating the tools and offering the help that many founders lack, of course, I'm going to get excited. So give us the thumbnail. So what is, two questions. What is ProjectionHub in your own words? Pitch to us. And second, what made you think of the idea? How did it start?
yeah, so ProjectionHub simply helps founders create financial projections for potential investors and lenders. The idea actually came to me. Uh, I served as the executive director of a SBA, a Small Business Administration lender, for about a decade, and we were asking all of our clients to create projections as part of their loan application. I was working on my personal taxes using TurboTax one year, and I thought, man, there's got to be like a TurboTax-like solution for financial projections. So called my brother, who's a software developer, and said, hey, you want to help me build something here? And so we originally kind of partnered together to do that, built out a software platform. That's the DIY software, built that out. And after fighting that slog for about 5+ years, we realize that Excel is still pretty good. and, and we we just kept like, well, we want to build this feature because it already exists in Excel, and we were trying to build it into our SaaS product. And boy, after long enough, it was like, man, everybody wants Excel templates. They already know how to use it. Let's just double down on that. So that's what today that's primarily what we have. We sell financial projection templates for all sorts of different industries, Excel and Google Sheet templates, and we have a CPA on staff that helps customize those models, as well as myself as well.
That's what I was going to point out, is that you say here our financial projection templates are CPA prepared. So you have somebody on staff, industry specific and easy to use. Let's go with write what you say. There are 70 unique CPA developed financial forecast worksheet templates to have lender and investor ready projections in no time at all. What's the reason it's important that you had something CPA prepared? And then what do you mean by industry specific? Like, what does it matter? Like, isn't a spreadsheet, isn't Excel? Excel is agnostic to the business. What's the reason it has to be industry specific from your point of view?
Sure. Yeah. So on the CPA prepared side, I have a degree in accounting, but I am not a CPA. So we're really excited 3 or 4 years ago to hire Grace Cisna, who's our CPA on staff. And I was like, I can hold my own, but that balance sheet, getting that balance sheet to balance and having confidence that it's correct, just takes that CPA level. And so, happy to have her on the team to keep me on the straight and narrow. But yeah, as it relates to industry specific, so the thing that's specific about most of our different templates is that every revenue model is going to be different. A lot of times the expenses, the assets and the liabilities, those are all kind of the same structure, and just a generic template will work. But we think about the revenue model, and we try to think about that from, how are you going to get a customer, and what's it going to cost you to get a customer? How are you going to find them, and help you kind of think through those tough questions and put some numbers in there, even if you don't know yet, right? But it's going to make you think through it as you fill one of them out, and it's just going to look a lot different. The assumptions that you put in for a dental office are going to look a lot different than what you do for an enterprise SaaS company on the revenue model side.
Sure. And I think that's important to hammer home, is when it comes to financial projections, unless you've done it many times before, there's stuff you don't know. And you may not know that there's a certain type of tax or a certain COG, cost of goods sold, that has to go into your projection. So what happens is, if you can get a template, which I find incredibly helpful, it makes you go, oh, wait a second, I didn't think about that. And that number will be 0, but at least you then know what you don't know, and you can go research, what's this going to cost me, which is incredibly important. Tell me from your perspective, why are projections so important? Like, let me back this up. Sometimes I think to myself, well, my theory, and I explained in the beginning of this video, the reason I get amped up about teaching financials to founders. But sometimes when you're applying for loans and you're doing more traditional type stuff, okay, institutional lending, accessing institutional capital, it almost seems like projections are just an exercise, something, a box to tick off. And I think a lot of founders kind of just go through the motions, but don't really learn what they're doing. In your opinion, why is it so important for founders to learn projections?
Yeah, I think what it can help you understand is whether your opportunity is a good one to even pursue. Like, can the math work out? Could this be a big business? So I was helping a client that had some early initial data that they were selling. Think of it as an e-commerce business. And they had some early data on conversion rates, what it cost them to acquire a customer, conversion rates, and then repeat order. And then they knew what their margin was. And as we started going through it, we realized like, man, this just can't get very big, like you can't make that much money. It won't, the math isn't working out. And they were trying to raise, some millions of dollars. And like, I don't see how, I don't think it can work in this market. So at least you need to be prepared to talk about that with an investor, because your current conversion rates and repeat order rates aren't telling a good story. And so they
100%.
learned that in that process. They figured that out by doing the projections.
You'd rather learn it while doing projections than get called out by a financially savvy investor. They're investors for a reason. If your numbers don't check out and it looks like you're kind of just throwing some stuff up there, or you haven't really thought it through, well, that's going to expose a liability and create a tremendous amount of risk from the investor's point of view for their capital, is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I think one of the important things, and I think it's highly underrated, is for founders to look through or think through their unit economics. For example, I talk to founders all the time, and I basically say, okay, you could sort of fall in one of two camps: high margin, low volume, or low margin, high volume. I think I said that right. Right.
Yeah.
And so many times founders, when I present like a unique business model, for example, I say, well, how about you try a freemium model? Or how about you find an alternative way to get, the revenue going and just get it out there for hyper growth and different things like that. And they say, but Ed, how am I supposed to make money? Or I can't make money with those with those margins. I say, well, work out the numbers. Like, I can't make money giving it for free, or I can't make money giving my vendors 50% versus the 20%. When they're sitting there going, I can't get any vendors, I can't get people on my platform because I'm only giving 20%. I say, well, why not bump it up to 50%? And they go, but I'm not going to make any money. How do you know until you've crunched the numbers? And so the fact that they can just go off the top of their head and say, I'm not going to make any money, I think that's an incredible weakness. And having a template and looking through those and being able to plug in some numbers. What if I went 50%? And how do my numbers change, and how much volume and all those things? It's the same thing back when Amazon said, all right, we're no longer going to advertise. Instead, we're going to put our advertising money into free shipping. And then they managed to actually turn a profit for the first time. And someone had to crunch the numbers and make a calculated assessment on whether that was going to be worth it or not. Obviously, a little mini test, but if you do a small test and you project it out, you can start to gain some insight of how you can shift your business model. These are experiences that I have. And once again, I think it's a highly underrated skill, one that a CEO is going to need to be able to think through their business model. What other types of advantages or stories have you experienced with founders in that they've been able to gain some other type of advantage by going through the projections, going through the exercise?
Yeah. So one of the things I really like doing, since a lot of, especially for our tech related industry models, we typically have this customer acquisition process. So how much are you going to pay for a click? And then what do you think your conversion rate's going to be? And so a lot of times people will fill that out initially, and we offer a free review of your projections after if you bought a template and you fill it out and you want to send it to me, and I'll review it and give you some feedback. And one of the things I often find is like they'll say, cost per click, $1 for whatever it is. And then I can go to Google AdWords keyword tool and I look up their industry, and they're selling, I don't know, whatever, bookkeeping software. And it's like, wow, for bookkeeping software, the average cost per click is $8 or, or $20. And you think you're going to get it for one. So when you change that, once you put in some real data, on cost per click or conversion rates, we'll see often people say e-commerce, I get a template that comes back with a 10% conversion rate. I'm like, that's probably not going to happen. And here's a link to a couple different articles that will show you what average conversion rates are in e-commerce. Makes all the difference in their projections. And right, so I think there is data out there, and I like to be able to, try to help them triangulate and get it closer. So we don't know the future, it's not going to be perfect, but like we can tell you when it's completely unreasonable. So
Yes.
yeah, that's what we're trying to help them do.
And I want to point out to founders, going through this exercise isn't a weakness. Actually, it shows a resourcefulness. It shows sort of a resilience or tenacity to be able to go through that exercise. And when you tell investors that you're learning this, listen, no investor, I can't think of any of the proper investors that I know. And I've heard some horror stories about people talking to investors that come from like these, the big 3 or big 4 accounting firms and what have you. And I don't consider them investors. I consider them just accountants with money type thing. But a real investor isn't going to hold it over your head and say, you don't know this, and I can't believe you're not, a CFO type. They just appreciate a founder that's willing to go through and learn this and fine tune and calculate. So it's almost like you're sort of giving them a little bit of practice on the questions that they're going to be asked. So then how else do you prepare founders to talk to investors?
Yeah. So a lot of times what I'll do if I'm reviewing somebody's projections, then I will, there's always this like kind of at a glance tab on all of our templates that just has like, revenue, expenses, net profit margin, and just at a high level, I can look at the margins and say, hey, these margins aren't in line with your industry. I mean, this is maybe a little harder in tech. It's really easy in small business. If, when the coffee shop template comes back and it's got 60% net profit margins, I'm like, here's the article that says coffee shops profit margins 2 to 5% or whatever it is, right?
Sure.
It's like, so, that's what I'm trying to point out, and I'll point those things out to folks and say, okay, because the investor's going to ask them that. So like, you better have a good reason why your margins are way different than, the industry norm. That's what I'm trying to help them figure out.
That's great. I can just see how helpful that would be to have somebody that's safe to talk about this with and to learn from. Let me go through your website a little bit, and I want to point out some key principles that founders should pay attention to. So first, you have step 1, select your industry. So you got 70 plus CPE developed templates. Don't worry if you can't find it. You'll help them out. Then you fill out your projection template. That's step 2. And you've got that all set up, which, is just as much as, Excel is such a robust platform, just having it all laid out there for you in tabs, very helpful. Then you provide a review and you can, just get started, right? And get that review and then keep going. So if you're not a fan of worksheets, okay, you're willing to create some projections or some worksheets, you're willing to do custom stuff for them, join thousands of other happy founders. And, this is great to display a valuable tool. This is it. This is your projection hub, etc. You're providing all these services. It's just really robust, which I think is fantastic. Before I get into pointing a few things out, give me like kind of a success story, a client that you helped out, a user that you were just like, oh man, that was so worth it. It was great to help them out. Great results. What do you got?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I think my favorite recent one that's coming to mind is that e-commerce client that we helped go through the process, and they realized like our conversion rates and our repeat order rates aren't good enough for what we're doing. So they went back and they did some more. Basically, they were not ready to raise money yet. They were not ready to scale yet because the numbers weren't looking good. So they went back and they did some more tests on the marketing, conversion rate optimization, that sort of stuff. Came back and said, "Hey, Adam, like we have some updated data on our conversion rates and whatnot. How does this look if we put these numbers in the model? Do we look investable?" And when we updated the model, it was like, yeah, I think this actually does work. So the idea wasn't terrible. It was investable. They just, with the current data they had, it wasn't there. So they are trying to raise right now. But I think that just, it's fresh in my mind. So, coming back that they went through the process, they learned something, they went back, they changed something about their business. So the numbers actually caused them to change something about their business. And I like that.
Very helpful. How much have people raised participate? Obviously, your tool isn't the thing that helps them raise, but clearly it makes a contribution. It actually could be the thing that prevents founders from raising that they're missing. But what has been your experience of the founders, entrepreneurs, business owners that you've been working with? How much have you seen people raise after working with them?
Yeah, it's something you asked me that. I'm like, man, I should be doing a better job of getting after the fact surveys and to figure out, what did you end up raising? So I know, on the high level, on some of our custom modeling, like Grace, our CPAs worked with, especially recently or within the last year, some crypto related companies that have raised 20 million with, and working with Grace. And a lot of times we'll partner on those kind of custom models. We'll partner with a pitch deck consultant. So they're working with some pitch deck consultant on their deck. They get to that financial slide, and then that's where we come in and we're connected there. So yeah, so that on the high level, I would say that obviously is not the norm. I think our norm is for folks that are, pre-seed, maybe some seed round funding, but before they have a lot of financial data, they're really kind of doing their initial work. So, a lot of the folks we're working with are trying to raise $1 million to, we don't see many over 5 million, I guess I should say.
Well, still $1 million is a good chunk of change for a pre-seed. Yep. Even raising $50,000 can be a game changer type thing to get things going. Let me point out something, and sometimes I sound like a broken record when I talk about this, but when you say, how do projection templates work? And first you got to select your industry. Again, another skill that I completely recommend to founders is what we teach in the consulting world as contextual acumen when it comes to management principles and organization development. And that is the ability to understand when you go in an organization. So me as an advisor, and I start advising an organization, if I don't understand the context in which that organization exists, then I'm going to be blind. It'll be like the blind leading the blind. And worst case scenario, I'll lead that company astray. So figuring out, okay, what's my industry? What are the factors, the financial factors that play into my industry? That's an important skill for people to understand, because the way it works in retail is not the way that works in e-commerce, which you're going to point out. So what you do is you contextualize the financials. You provide pre-contextualization with these templates, but then you help them think about, hey, wait a second, your repeat, retention rate or your margins, even though retention and margin are the same numbers or the same line in the financials from one industry to next, every industry is different in terms of standards. So you go out and you research and you're guiding the founder in how to contextualize their financials, which I want to point out, everybody, and it seems like I'm plug in. I want everybody, every founder that I work with to learn this. It's even more important because the investor may not have context. So I'm sure you've seen this. The investor is used to investing in one thing, what have you, or say you're just, generic, the loan person, and you didn't realize that in this industry, there's a specific financial nuance. And so they bring it to you, and you look at it and you say, oh, okay, that's actually quite insightful. This is important, to understand. And so in many ways, I think that financial projections, if you do them correctly, can also educate the investor. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. And we have I think one of the templates that I really like is our marketplace template. And what it's a unique thing, and it helps people realize the difficulty of it. I think the template will help them realize the difficulty of building a marketplace business model, because it'll ask them, what's it going to cost you to acquire the buy side and the other side of the marketplace, the sell side. So whether if it's Uber, you need to acquire the riders and the drivers, right? And then you need to make them match at the same time. And so there's a piece in the model that will highlight, kind of your capacity for riders and the capacity for drivers. And you can't go over, you need to balance this out. And I think that just, again, going through that exercise and asking those questions just makes people realize, like, oh, this is it's unique to that industry. And yeah, they can think through the tough parts. On the investor side too, we have a lot of our templates have like an investor dashboard, where it allows you to kind of put in your base numbers are pre-populated, but then it allows the investor to change some of the key assumptions without changing the base model in the template.
Nice.
So they can play around and see a modified income statement, based on, if they say, oh, I don't think you're going to get 20 customers in the first year, I think you're going to get 10, what is that? How's that change things? Which is kind of fun.
I had no idea that was a feature. That's pretty awesome. You're actually helping the investor do their own due diligence, which is great, because yes, we have our own we have our own financial models that we're plugging into. What a pain to go plug in something and build that, because we have to do due diligence on our side. That's just part of our fiduciary responsibility to the people who've trusted us with their money. All right. So let's pretend ProjectionHub never existed. Okay. Here's Adam. You and I are talking. I'm a founder. I tell you, listen, Adam, I got to present to this investor, or I'm applying for a loan or something like that. And I have no idea how to do projections. I don't know how to set this all up to get to that part of my pitch deck where it's the financials. Again, pretend ProjectionHub doesn't exist. You're just giving advice. What advice would you give founders? Where do they start? What should they do to begin to learn how to do that? They're probably going to do it from scratch. Let's pretend templates don't exist, but get in the mindset and learn how to do this. What do you suggest? Walk me through the steps. Coach me through it.
Yeah. So I think, and it ties into, well, I'm not supposed to talk about templates, right? But
yeah,
but the mindset is like, how do I acquire a customer? Especially for a tech company, it's always going to be, how am I going to acquire the customer in the first place? So what do I think, whether that's paid ads or organic? So an example with organic search, a lot of times people will just say, oh, I think we're gonna do SEO, and we're gonna get a bunch of people coming organically to our website. And there's a bunch of tools out there where you can see, what do other websites get in terms of organic traffic. So that's what I'll often point out, is like, hey, go do the research, find your competitor. Now, are you going to get more organic traffic than them on month one? And they've been around for this long. Like, so again, it just that's, I think that would be my advice, is like, think about how you're going to get customers, and then go try to find data sources as best you can. Google AdWords keyword tool, and I use Ahrefs to find out traffic of other websites, and you find conversion rate studies for your industry. All of these things are going to help you start to get those key assumptions. that you've got to put into a spreadsheet at some level, right?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the principle is you have a set of assumptions. You might be in business, you might have tested it and you have a set of data, but then you're going to have assumptions on how that's going to scale into the gajillions of dollars you plan to make, which equates to gajillions of dollars return for the investors, which they want to see. And therefore, you need the data. You're going to have to figure out your unit economics. But you're talking about, hey, there's a lot of research out there that you can do. Go do your research and find out where you are in that ballpark when it comes to your assumptions. That's the type of stuff you're advocating for.
Yeah, and I've been talking a lot about on the revenue side. On the expense side, especially for tech companies, and what we usually recommend is for the first, let's say, 18 months, you might have line of sight to know, like, we think we're going to hire this person, we think we're going to spend this much on marketing or this much on product development. You might know pretty specific dollar amounts for a while. But then, if you're successful and you grow, you don't know probably what dollar amount, what you're going to pay salary someone 3 years down the line. And so we kind of say, hey, after 18, 24 months, for your expense line items, just use a percentage of sales, a percentage of revenue. And so you can find there's great, you just do some Google search on like average spend of sales and marketing for a B2B SaaS company. And it'll say, on average, they spend, 15 to 18% of revenue on sales and marketing or whatever it is. That way, your model can scale, your expenses kind of scale with your revenue. And you can back it up based on some research.
Defensible assumptions that you're making. What do you think about the technique? Here's what I used to do. I used to actually go look at other companies' financials and see how they've modeled it out and begin to start deconstructing it or reverse engineering it and then build my own. That's just the only way that I figure out to learn without going and actually getting some type of certification or going to school for accounting. What do you think about that technique? Start with something that's already existing out there and try and reverse engineer it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think definitely if you have some financials of a similar company or similar type concept, then yeah, definitely that's a great approach because it's, again, real data. We did a little study of there was some data available on different startups, and they had some revenue data and like time in business. And so I went through and just gathered all of this information into a spreadsheet and then tried to do some averages. And it was like, on average, these businesses in these industries in their first, 0 to 1 year did this much revenue. And then e-commerce businesses from years 2 to 5 on average did this much revenue. Because I was curious, because we're telling folks and trying to review their numbers, and like I wanted, yeah, real data as much as possible from other businesses is really helpful, I think. So
yes. What do you do in terms of TAM, total addressable market? How much do you help founders figure out what it could be? Let's talk about it. Like, there's two ways to build TAM. TAM first is top down, show them how big the industry is and what have you. And I personally think it's a big mistake saying, cybersecurity is a $31 trillion industry. We capture 1% of the market. We're going to be all billionaires, right? We're going to buy yachts and all that good stuff. And I just think that's just not smart. But then building from the bottom up can be an arduous experience because a lot of times you don't have necessarily the existing data out there. What are your thoughts on how to build TAM into your financial projections?
yeah, I think, and this may be just because we use SEO a lot at ProjectionHub, and we're trying to figure out, when we want to figure out what new template to build, we're going to see what are people searching for, if we see, oh, look, there's a lot of people searching for mobile app financial models, well, maybe that would be, and then to figure out what the TAM is, we're like, we want to know how many people are searching each month for mobile app financial model. That gives us some concept of how big the market is. And so that's a typical thing that I'll do with founders again, is just go to Google AdWords keyword tool and say, this is how much search volume there is for like this and related keywords. So you're saying you're going to sell more than than everybody that's searching. And there might be more business out there than people that are specifically searching for it, right? So that's possible, but
Yeah,
it still puts it in perspective.
exactly. How do you defend that unless you've got something out there? You could tell an investor all day long, I really believe there's way more business out there than what the data suggests, but they're not going to buy that, right? That's, again, you're taking a big risk on an assumption. And so I think that's a fantastic idea. So then, question for you: when should a founder bring in? You have the advantage of having a CP on staff, which I think is brilliant, to be able to help founders and get some expert advice without having to bring somebody on. But when do you think founders should actually bring in their own financial help? Maybe it is a CPA, maybe it's a fractional CFO to help them with their financial projections.
Yeah, I think I think a fractional CFO can make a lot of sense, especially if you raise a seed round. Then I mean, I think we don't work with almost anyone that's raising Series A or beyond. It's pretty rare, unless we just happen to work with them before or something and we know them. But just because at that point they probably have either someone on staff or a fractional CFO or somebody that's dedicated to it. So yeah.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have gotten that far to raise a Series A if you didn't have your financial house in order, right? So what about at that pre-seed? Like, I know a lot of founders, they get very nervous and they sweat it out a lot, and then they go and they drop big money on bringing somebody in, and it's almost like shooting a fly with a bazooka. It's just overkill. What have you seen, or what would you recommend in those cases?
Yeah, that's another good point, I think, is that a lot of times we sell templates but also our custom modeling. So a founder will often come to us in the pre-seed stage and say, I want to build out this custom model with all these bells and whistles and assumptions. And it's like, you haven't had your first investor meeting yet. So a lot of times I say, like, here, use the template. It's, $99. Use the template, fill it out yourself, follow the video, fill it out yourself, have that first handful of meetings. Now, if the investors are saying, you need to continue working on this. Like, once someone tells you that, if they're interested, but they want you to do more work on the financials, then okay, maybe it's worth spending $1,500 on like really customizing something for your situation. But yeah, that's very common for us to say, I don't, we could build anything you want, but I don't know that's going to help you at all at this point. So
I would appreciate that. I would appreciate if more dev shops out there would do the same thing. You're kind of advocating for an MVP financial model, minimum viable product, instead of, hey, let's, build the whole kitchen and all the accessories and everything around it, versus let's skip the granite countertops and let's just build you the sink and let's start from there. I think that's really a great way to approach it. Let's jump in a little bit. I want to show off some of these templates. You have the most popular templates, and two-sided marketplace, acquisition. That is a really important one. Airbnb, auto repair shop, brewery, single unit, budget versus actual, coffee shop, daycare facility. Look at all the ones that you've been putting down there, which is fantastic. And you said that what you do is you actually research. So you take a very informed, research-driven approach as to supply and demand. So what is the demand out there? And you're putting that together, which is fantastic. So for everybody out there, you've obviously, you know, created this for scale and to make this accessible. Like, what does it cost? Like, how much should a founder expect to spend if they came to Projection Hub and said, let me get a template and do all this and get the service?
Yeah. Yeah. So almost all of our templates are retail at 99 bucks. Um, and I've got a coupon code for you all, for anyone listening. So if you use coupon code startups, you will get 25% off. So I think we're looking at pretty affordable rate here. And yeah.
That's super affordable. And that includes the review as well.
Yeah. So, if you send me your file, I don't spend an hour reviewing it, because
Sure.
usually the things jump out at me after seeing them enough. But yeah, so what I do, we do all of our customer support over Loom videos. I don't know if you use Loom, but we
We do.
typically will just yeah, pull up their file, and I'll go through and say, yep, this looks good, looks reasonable, or this looks off, or fishy to me. This is what I'd focus on, and just send them that review that way.
Okay. $99. And because, we roped you in, somehow we twisted your rubber arm to join the startups.com community. You're doing a special for founders. If they use the code startups, which I'll put all the information as also, links to the website, what have you, they get 25% off. What would you say? Like, what piece of advice would you give to a founder? Maybe they're a little nervous, a little insecure, going into new territory. It's kind of like people when they want to get their personal financial lives together. I say, well, do you know what your budget is? Type thing. And it's scary. And I get it. So many people just kind of do the intuitive method. It's kind of like, counting your calories and macros versus this whole intuitive eating thing that happens. And I get it. Certain part of that is to use your intuition. But when it comes to numbers and like how much interest you're paying or what your monthly budget is, etc., I don't think intuition is a good way to make those decisions. So people get nervous because they don't want to look at the reality, because, money is an emotionally charged subject, especially for founders. And I say develop a soft heart and thick skin when you're talking to investors and they're beating you up on your numbers. Get used to it, because it only gets worse if you raise a lot of money. And that's my advice, is buckle in, because, go through it, because this is only going to help you in the future. But for someone who's like, should I, go to Projection Hub and sign up, but I'm a little nervous, etc., what sort of encouragement you give as far as the mindset that you would want them to see, you would want to see them coming in with if they're going to start down this path?
Yeah, I mean, I think going in informed, and we hope that our templates and process are going to help you through that and think through those questions, so that if you're scared of the template, you're going to be even more scared when you're talking to the first investor, right? So the hope is we're a friendly, low, not a whole lot to lose option here to start out with. And yeah, I think we'll give you some good feedback, and yeah, hope you avoid looking silly or feeling embarrassed in front of the investor.
You'd rather look silly and be a little embarrassed with your review than, blow it in front of the investor. That's what I tell founders all the time. Also, I want to point out, you have so many great articles here. I was looking through how to start a rental property business with little no experience. You're just all about practicality. You took this, you're full time, right? Like, give us a little bit insight. What's the founder journey been like for you, so that everybody who's thinking about coming to Projection Hub knows you're a founder's founder. Like, you're there with them. You know what it's like. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I thought I started out wanting to build a SaaS business, and spent a lot of time and effort doing that, building a software tool, and just to come to the realization is like, man, I should just focus on what customers are asking me for. It's like it sounds, it sounds cool to have a software, but it's like if everyone was just asking for an Excel template, like maybe I should just do that.
Love it.
So yeah, I think that's been the learning curve for me. It's like, yeah, there's a part of me that wants to say, yeah, I'm a founder of a SaaS, a high growth SaaS company. But it's okay to be the founder of a growing Excel template and company. It doesn't sound quite as good, but it's been, but since I've gotten over that, business has gotten a lot better. And yeah, we're doubling down on content right now. So we do a lot of YouTube videos, and then like you saw those blog posts where I'll go through and do the research on, the things people are asking. How much does it cost to start this business? How much revenue could I generate doing this? What are my typical expenses? I just answer those questions, and Google's been rewarding us with traffic. And so yeah, it's been good. We are a small team, just me, director of marketing, and then Grace, our CPA, and then a handful of contractors. But we've been growing and having fun.
That's great. I think that's a wonderful success story. So important. I used to be a part of a startup, and one of our things, our noble causes or whys, was the lifeblood of entrepreneurialism. And that went all the way to small business. We were, focusing on Main Street. And I see that's something that you're doing as well. What's your vision for the future? So where's ProjectionHub going to go? You're building it, you're growing, but plans for world domination still, using Excel, templates, of course. But what's the next step? What's on the horizon for you and ProjectionHub?
Yeah, so my hope is we have been selling these templates mostly just to individual business owners, right? But we do have a handful of clients that are consultants, accountants, business advisors, and they need multiple templates. They work with multiple different clients, and so our some of our attention right now is towards our template library subscription. So we're still trying to figure out how we can get some of that recurring revenue that's so nice. If we can provide our entire template library available to consultants and accountants and advisors, that sort of thing. And so we've got some customers that are subscribing to the entire library of templates, and I think that's probably a future hope, at least. And just growing the individual to business owners. There's a lot of opportunity there. Somebody showed me the other day, can't remember if it was like template.net or something like that, but someone said, do you realize they have like 1.2 million monthly unique visitors? It's like, wow, this is a pretty big market. And I really hadn't heard of them very much, don't even bump into them. So yeah.
Adam, what I appreciate about this conversation is your thoughtfulness, and that, again, you're a founder's founder, in the sense that even though you're kind of focusing on this niche of the projections, which is, I think, an underserved pain point when it comes to founders, for sure, because we're out there teaching about pitch decks and building MVPs and what have you. So you're fulfilling something that I am grateful for. Let's put it that way. But because you're so thoughtful, when you're helping founders, they can know the place that you're coming from as a founder, that you're not just telling them to do it, you're doing it yourself, which I think is fantastic. You're leading by example. And so, again, thank you. I'm going to point out once again, okay? So founders out there who are watching this, startups.com and, our network, when you get to that point, you need to create financial projections, don't leave it up to chance. Come get a template, $99, get 25% off if you use the coupon, plug, because I just think it's a no-brainer to drop this. If you're raising a few $100,000 or $1 million, dropping 99 bucks on a template, come on. Like, it's complete no-brainer. You'd be remiss not to do it. Adam, thank you so much for spending this time. And I'm going to make sure that everybody has your contact information, and let's share in our success together.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you, Ed. Thanks for having me. It's been great.